Mics are on. Madam Clerk, roll call.
Counsel Barton?
Present.
Present Counsel Cahill?
Present.
Present Counsel Capano?
Present.
Present Counsel Chakutis? Present Counsel Calucci? Present Counsel Seer? Present Counsel LaPierre?
Present.
Present Counsel Lozey? Present Counsel Net, absent Counsel Trahan? Present Counsel Walsh?
Present.
Present, 10 yes.
Could we all please rise for a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance? And if we could keep in our minds our fellow colleague, Councilor Hong Net, who's recovering from some surgery. We wish him a speedy recovery. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'll take a motion to accept the February 23rd
All set.
meetings. Motion made and
Second.
seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Made seconded.
Motion
Okay.
Madam Clerk, communications?
We have no communication.
We have no
They're fine now.
communications. Public
First-
hearings.
First public hearing on an ordinance amending the City of Lynn zone ordinance regulating multifamily high-rise buildings in the WF1, WF2, WF3, WS, and SHCO districts.
I'm going to open the public hearing for those wishing to speak in opposition. Anyone in opposition wishing to speak to? Folks wishing to testify, if you'd like to speak, just come get in line, and all we ask is that you state your name and address for the record.
Okay.
The floor is yours.
All right. Thanks. Good evening. My name is Jose Palma. I live on 476 Summer Street here in Lynn. I would like to start by reading an article from Lynn Item from June 17. And this is what it says. This is from Housing and Economic Development Secretary Jay Ash, told local business and political leader Tuesday before urging them to unify around Lynn's renewal. My number one priority is Lynn. You have tremendous leadership, but you need to get on the same page. Then he moved on and said, the focus have to be on commercial development, on market rate housing. When you develop market rate housing, you are bringing in young people who aren't thinking about kids. They are thinking about a nightlife, and they are going out and telling everybody else. Then, I would like to move on to today's decision. Today's decision is saying, if you want to build in Lynn, and if you want to build 1 bedroom and 2 bedroom apartments, you are not obligated to provide of parking spaces. But yet, you are saying, if you are going to build 3 bedroom apartments, you have to provide 3 parking spaces. It sounds to me that that is pretty much following Mr. Ash's suggestion, which I believe this decision will affect many, many people in the city of Lynn. I don't believe it was enough conversation in the city of Lynn for this decision to be taken tonight. I was participating in the board meeting, in the planning board meeting just a few minutes ago, and I asked how today's meeting was advertising, and it was said, the Lynn Item, and maybe in some online sources. That the Lynn Item is a great newspaper in the city of Lynn, but it doesn't get to every resident in the city of Lynn. And I believe that tonight's decision should be postponed, and have a conversation with the community, and let's all get together and think about the future of the city on Lynn. I believe if the decision were to be made tonight, it is discriminatory to families with kids. It can motivate legal challenges, and I don't think it's the best decision for the city of Lynn. I believe development should be welcome, but I also believe the community should be part of these decisions. I would like to ask the city councilor today to postpone and have community conversations, and let's get together and move Lynn forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Hi, good evening. My name is Ugo Emedosi. I live at 82 Cottage Street, Lynn, Mass. I just have a question. Who or what woke up one morning and decided to change this law? What are the benefits to the citizens, residents, current residents of Lynn? Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening. My name is Dara, D-A-R-A. I live in 51 Bayview Avenue, Lynn, Mass. I have been a Lynn resident for 27 years. I come here today before you to share some of my thoughts. Our thought about the waterfront development along the Lynn Way. Our city is a blue-collar city. It's very diverse, with many walks of life and different communities. We come together and work so hard to build this city. The foundation of this city was put together by hard-working immigrants. We have so much pride in our hometown city of Lynn. We feel that the local resident shall receive a maximum benefit of any new development coming, especially in the waterfront construction project. The waterfront construction project must allocate a big portion of the high-paying job to our locals. If the city willing to change for the benefit of the investor to make more money, we demand that the city make a change to benefit to our Lynn residents. We ask the city to take into consideration and require equal employment opportunity, participating regardless any federal, state, city, or private grant. The EEO clause must include hiring of local minority-owned small business, hiring of local women, minimum of 10%, hiring of local minority with a minimum of 20%. And number 4 is hiring union tradesmen. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Thelma Rosales, and I live in 11 Olive Street, and I've been living in Lynn for 20 years. And I was wondering, with this project, it's good for the rich people, but what's gonna happen to our families? What's gonna happen when these people needs to get kids? Are they gonna move out of Lynn? What's gonna happen? Thank you.
My name is Oscar Ross. I live in 11 Olive Street. I love the American dream, but I also love development. Okay, it's okay. I have been living in Lynn for 25, 30 years, and I see a lot of changes that have been taking place through today. But I also encourage the council to see that everybody get benefits from it, not only big investors. But I also like to point that we need to see the low-income people, that is the hard-working people. I also an immigrant and hard-working. So I would like to ask the biggest investors to think about the benefit of the community of Lynn, the city that I live. Thank you.
My name is Louise Fortune, and I live at 386 Chestnut Street. Earlier, I heard that you have 19 meetings about this development. I never heard anything about it. Is there a way you can take time to think about it and push it back a little bit? Thank you.
Buenas noches.
Good evening.
Mi nombre es Yudelka Lovera.
My name is Judelka Rivera.
Vivo en el 24 de la Trinity.
I live on 24 Trinity Ave.
Y estoy feliz de escuchar que se van a construir, o hay la posibilidad de que se van a construir apartamentos.
And I am happy that there is the opportunity, or may be an opportunity, to build new apartments.
Pero quiero decirle que por favor piensen en nosotros, las personas de bajos ingresos,
But I also want to let you know to think about us, the low-income people,
los que tenemos hijos.
people that have kids.
Tengo muchas amistades y familias
I have many friends and families
que viven 2 y 3 familias juntas en un solo apartamento
that live 1 and 2 families in the same apartment
debido a lo cara que está la renta y lo pocos apartamentos que quedan vacíos.
due to how expensive the rent is right now, and that we don't have enough apartments in the city.
Y creo que esto es una muy buena oportunidad
And I think that this is a great opportunity
si todos estamos accesibles a la vivienda.
if everybody have access to those new housing.
Por favor, piensen en todo, que todos somos iguales y que todos tengamos accesibilidad a la vivienda que vamos a construir.
Please think about everybody and make sure everything is accessible to everybody in the city of Lynn.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you.
Good evening. Isaac Simon Hodes, 28 Flint Street in Lynn. I want to first just say a few words about why it makes sense, in my view, to bring up this pretty wide range of issues. I mean, we've heard about local hiring and what kind of jobs we'll get out of this. We've heard about the housing needs of the community broadly, and I think it's very true from my experience that there's a great need for affordable housing for lower income people as well as middle income people. And we've also heard about the need to integrate new development into the rest of the city so we don't end up with a sort of separate enclave that's only for very wealthy people, but that we sort of stay true to the character of what Lynn's about, that it's a proudly blue-collar town, that we're more integrated. We may have ways to go, but we're more integrated than a lot of places. But these issues might seem to stray a little bit from what's before you all, which is kind of nuts and bolts. This is about parking. This is about the retail space requirement. In my view, it's because these changes to the zoning ordinance don't just affect this one first development, or I think there are probably 2 developments that people have in mind. Right? These are changes to the ordinance that are, until you all do something else, they're permanent, and they're going to affect development going forward for many, many years. And I think we should be really clear about what these changes do. And earlier on, someone asked the question, well, who woke up one morning and wanted these changes? Right? These are pretty esoteric changes, you know, parking space requirements, the width, these things. And, you know, I don't think it's any secret. These changes are designed to facilitate development that particular companies will make a lot of money on. That's how development works in the system we have. And that is what it is. That's fine. And no one, certainly not myself, is saying we don't want development. I think everyone in this room could probably agree, if on nothing else, that, you know, the sort of way that the land behind the Walmart is right now is not the best use of that area. So we all want development. The question in my mind is what kind of development? And that's why it makes sense when we're making these changes to think about the other implications, because these changes are changes made by a public body that represents the general public of this city that will create private wealth. Right? That'll enhance the ability of certain developers to make more money. And in my view, that's fine. That's how we push development forward. But that's exactly the time that we should talk about how can we make changes alongside these that benefit the broader public, right? That benefit the people who are living in Lynn now, and that make sure we address potential concerns that the development could cause. So I think it's very much on topic to talk about these other issues. You know, there's certain changes that are needed, and this is the moment that we're going to talk about making them, and it's got to be a negotiation, and we can't, you know, give away all the changes that you know, developers want going into the indefinite future, and then come back later and say, well, what about these, you know, potential changes that could benefit the public? You know, the horse will kind of be out of the barn at that point. So I think that's why folks feel like, you know, these other issues are very relevant. My concern is that, you know, we've sort of seen how this plays out in other cities. We've seen East Boston and Chelsea and Somerville, and in all of those cities, you know, when development first started, the idea was that no one wants to go there, and we've got to do whatever we can to get development coming in. And then a few years later, you see in East Boston massive displacement of families that have lived in that community for decades, and massive displacement also of more recent immigrants who are such a critical part of the fabric of that community. And I think that's sort of the default, that unless we really think it through and take other action, that's how development's been working in Massachusetts, in New York. I mean, you could go across the country, that, you know, it's driven by profit, and unless there's real care taken, it ends up being a process that reinforces segregation, both in terms of race and class, that it can often create these sort of isolated communities that aren't really part of the city that they're being built in. So I would really hate to see that happen in Lynn, and I think we're the city of firsts, and we should think about doing things that follow a different path, right? That have development, but development that doesn't cause displacement of existing residents. That we have development, but it's development that integrates with the rest of the city and reinforces the good things about Lynn. I think one important point is that this is not our last chance. You know, and I really sympathize with the efforts that have been going on for decades to bring us to this point. And I sympathize with the concern and the fear that, you know, this is the moment and we've got to do what the developers need right now, because if we don't, this is going to slip through our fingers again like it has in the past, and we're going to end up with nothing. But I think this moment's different in really important ways than the situation 10, 20 years ago, right? The pressures that are driving developers to want to come to Lynn now are demographic shifts that are not going to reverse. There are just not that many places to build in Boston and in the adjacent communities. Lynn has got something, and I think we should have the confidence as a community that we're going to get this done. We are going to get development done. I have no doubt, but I think we have to have the confidence to say, let's take the time to have the community process and negotiate things so that, yes, we give developers what they need to bring in the resources, to bring in the capital, to make things happen, but at the same time, not after, when they don't need the city council anymore, but right now, we negotiate things that'll be beneficial to the public good, the entire community, that'll make sure that we don't end up with further segregation, that'll make sure we don't exacerbate what's already a housing crisis, to make sure that we do have an integrated, mixed-income community. And I think we can do it. I think it's innovative. It's not the way it's been done necessarily in East Boston and other communities, but if you look at what people are saying now in East Boston, and even there was a Boston Globe article where there was a quote from someone involved with the Boston Redevelopment Authority, where he said, we didn't realize, when we were making these plans in East Boston, where we'd be at today. And they wish now that they had paid more attention to, what kind of affordability needs will there be going into the future. I think, just very clearly, having some kind of mixed income guidelines for development right now in Lynn would really not, in many cases, impact rent that much right now. Maybe if there were a small number of units for very low-income people, that would have an impact on the rents. But for moderate income, mixed-use housing, that's not necessarily going to be that much lower than market. It's going to be a guarantee that going into the future, we don't end up with this sort of segregated, isolated area as rents do go up. So I hope that you'll consider taking a little bit of time, having a little bit of a further process to think about, while we have this unique moment that there's some leverage, that we have developers who need something from the city, we have the confidence to say, well, we want to talk about what we can do that wouldn't stop development, but would go along with development and allow some further public benefits. I really don't think this is the last chance. If you go to buy a new car, that salesman's going to want to make you think it's the last one on the lot, and you buy it now, or you can search the whole East Coast for that model and that color. And I just don't think that's the situation here. It may have been in the past, but we've got buildable area that's in great demand. There's a whole new sort of ball game in terms of the demand for this kind of housing, and I think we have the chance to navigate this and build on what's been learned in these other cities where they do have even worse housing crises now. I mean, I love this city, I love its character, and I don't want to see us in 20 years wishing that we thought a little bit further into the future, in seeing people who have been longtime Lynn residents, families who really anchor this community getting priced out. Or I also don't want to see Lynn losing its character as a welcoming home for newer immigrants, working class people who can't afford other communities, and have really helped revitalize and build this city. Just like in East Boston, people got pushed out. We're going to end up with that same situation in Lynn, and that really scares me, that we lose, something special about this city. So I hope, we can take the time to, not delay this forever, not stop development, but have a community conversation and figure out how we can get some of these things alongside, what the developers need. And just one sort of concrete example, I know that in addition to the parking, this proposal eliminates the requirement for retail space on the first floor in certain types of waterfront area developments that are very large. And that might make a lot of sense. I'm not saying I oppose that. But I think we need to consider, do we need to have something else in place of that requirement? And the reason is this. I understand that eliminating that requirement makes a building much more profitable, that you can sell, if you go by square foot, putting apartments or condos on that first floor is going to make you more money than putting retail space. And that's fine, that might make sense. My concern is that a sort of extra benefit of having retail is that it means there's going to be more interaction. Right? If you have retail space, by nature, that means the general public and folks from other neighborhoods in Lynn are going to be back and forth into that building. And once it becomes, purely residential, particularly if it's all market rate and potentially all very high income going into the future, it creates, almost the feel of a gated community. And that's not what Lynn's about. It has never been, and it shouldn't be. So maybe it makes sense to get rid of that retail requirement. But what other kind of measures might we take in terms of design guidelines, in terms of other uses, whether it's educational, whether it's other public use, that might take up just a small portion of a first floor? But what kind of uses, should we ask for if we're not going to have the retail? And again, it's sort of the time to figure that out and do it is now. We could make this change, and it's off to the races, and any leverage we had to negotiate some public benefit is going to be lessened. So I think now is the time to do it. But again, thank you for your time.
My name is Jonathan Feinberg. I live at 18 Empire Street here in Lynn. I'd first of all like to thank everyone who's been involved in this process to bring development to the waterfront for your hard work, your commitment, and your enthusiasm in coming to this point. Lynn is a very proud city. I'm proud to be from the city. I'm sure you're all proud of your wards in the city as a whole. And I'd like to humbly ask that we take a moment and elevate that pride to a point where we can really hold up public participation in these processes that determine the future of our city. With all due respect to Mr. Cowdell and everyone who's been involved in this process to this point, I know that there were a number of very well-attended meetings held with the public in the process of developing the master plan for the waterfront. That master plan was published in 2007. In 2008, the housing market crashed nationally, creating a radically different landscape for development as well as for the future of our city and the security of the residents of the city, lifelong or new or otherwise. So I'd like to take this moment to request that we try to insert some more public participation into this process. I learned today, for example, that the site review board meetings are technically public, but are not announced to the public. I also learned that the meeting that was held today for the, I believe it was the zoning board, there were 2 announcements made in the Lynn item in English only. This is a very diverse city. We speak a multitude of languages. That's something that is brought up over and over again in all of the proud pieces I read about Lynn and its strength and its diversity. So I would like to just take a moment to reflect on the fact that when we only appeal to certain parts of our population, we only invite certain parts of our population into this public process, we're really doing a disservice to the strengths of this city. And we're really doing a disservice to the possibility that we have with this waterfront development. So I would like to request that we make public and announce publicly in multiple languages any meeting that pertains to development, including this parking process. The first I heard about this was the notice in the item, and it seemed like it was a done deal at that point. And after attending the meeting earlier tonight, it was certainly a done deal by the time we got there. This is not showing pride in our community. This is not showing pride in the residents that elected you fine people into the office that you hold. And this is not going to show pride in how we move forward as a city and as a community. Thank you very much for your time.
David Gass, 150 Linway. I live at Seaport Landing, and I've been there since the building was built 30 years ago. And I live on the first floor, which is fine. I'm not against this plan. The idea of bringing more housing is an excellent idea. As much housing as we can build in Lynn is good for the city of Lynn. And I live on the first floor, and it's a beautiful place to live, and it's 8.5-foot parking spaces. I understand that concept too. That's very important for a developer, having been one. But my concern is this, is that you're giving something to a developer. It's almost like spot zoning, but it isn't, because it applies to many sites probably. But it's giving it to a developer before negotiating things in turn that you could get from the city, like was pointed out. The issue of a trade-off. We don't have linkage here, which you have in Boston, which raised $50 million for affordable housing. But we should trade off and meet with the developers and ask them if we could put in conditions, like Isaac was saying, that had to do with several things. First of all, this is a majority city. And in observing the last $100 million in development in the city since this police station was built, I see very few minority workers and I see very few local Lynn workers. So how do you get around that? You have to talk to the developer and negotiate something if you're trading off and giving them many more apartments. The fact is that in Seaport Landing, recently a sale of a commercial spot brought in $180 a foot. The sale of a residential on the first floor brought in $205 a foot. So there's much more money in residential, and I support that idea. But I think you should table this whole issue until you can negotiate with the specific developer and ask him if he would trade off several things. One is a fund that he would give, a donation that he would give that would be for job training. Maybe he would hire these workers. And affordable housing. Affordable housing was cut nationally in half, so that Lynn Housing only gets half as what it gets when you, as a council, supported our project on Union Street. They only get $500,000 affordable housing and HUD funds, where they used to get $1.1 million. So there's very pressing need for affordable housing money, and you could help with that. And you could help also with the idea of job training. And I would also suggest you raise the issue of, in a friendly way, with the developer, of hiring local people and putting a quota when they hire the general contractor, a quota for local workers and a quota for minority workers. Thank you.
Seth Albaum, 7 Central Square. As someone who has spoken so often about making it easier for development in Lynn, I do feel a little funny standing in opposition, but I stand here because I do have some concerns and share some of the concerns that I've heard tonight. I'm not thrilled to hear today that the developer wants to eliminate retail space. We made that mistake downtown when we ignored the Market Street vision plan. A plan that not many people have heard of because I'm not sure it's seen the light of day in a long time. We're talking about improving public access to the waterfront. We're talking about linking the waterfront to the downtown. We've been talking about that for years, but now I'm a little bit worried that we are going to end up with an enclave, kind of a walled fortress, if you will, unto itself. I've seen developments like that. I would never live in one myself. As a double-income, no-kids family living in a 2-bedroom, I chose that lifestyle with the idea that I could go downstairs and walk to a shop. And I think it's short-sighted for the developer because that's a selling point that they're now not going to have. So they're stuck crossing the Linway. Well, I don't mind them coming downtown, but I think losing retail is a mistake, and I think it sets a bad precedent for the rest of the development along the Linway. As that'll inevitably happen. I believe it will. Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition? Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition? Seeing no one wishing to speak in opposition, if folks who don't want to speak, if they'd like to raise their hands, if they're in opposition to the public hearing. We'd say roughly about 35 folks. Thank you. I'm going to now open the public hearing for those wishing to speak in support.
Mr. President, members of the City Council, my name is Jim Cowdell. I'm in charge of economic development for the City of Lynn. I'm a lifelong resident, born here, raised here, will die here. Very proud of our city, and the issue before you tonight, number one, was voted on unanimously in favor by the Planning Board tonight, so that happened. People that spoke talked about community involvement. I so strongly support that. When we came up with our vision of the waterfront, we held 19 public meetings. 19 public meetings. And we said to ourselves at these public meetings, what does the City of Lynn want for its waterfront? And it was very clear that in the past, very poor decisions were made. I mean, we have the only Walmart that if you stood on the roof, you'd have a beautiful view of the Atlantic Ocean. You have fast food restaurants. You have auto dealership. We can and we will do better than that. And that's what those 19 public meetings really turned out, was a vision for the City of Lynn. And it was the waterfront master plan was developed so that it would guide the city, not for 1 year or 2 years, but for 2 to 3 decades. That's our vision. So tonight, the zoning changes that we support, it will allow for the Beacon site to be developed. Now, that Beacon site has been vacant for almost 30 years. 20,000 cars pass there on a daily basis. They look at that lot of land and they say, why isn't that being developed? Tonight, we have an investment group that is ready to invest $80 million onto that site. It will create 350 residential units. In all due respect to the people who spoke, Lynn, and a report is coming out in the next couple of weeks from the Housing Authority, will show that the city of Lynn, anybody want to take a guess at our percentage of affordable housing? That report will show we're at 35%. We have done our fair share. I don't know of any city in the Commonwealth that has 35% affordable housing. We support affordable housing. But this project will be 350 residential units. They will all be market rate. There will be a boardwalk that will connect from the Heritage State Park to behind this development, to behind Kettle Cuisine, to the Lynn Commuter Ferry site. You will be able to go down there with your family and enjoy that open area, which hasn't been open in my lifetime. It will produce, on an annual basis, $1.3 million in taxes that will be utilized for our schools, for our public safety, for our DPW, et cetera. $1.3 million on an annual basis. This really and truly is the first development since we passed that vision to come forward and say, we believe in your vision. We want to invest here in Lynn. We agree with your vision. The council has been a partner in this from the very beginning, from all of those 19 public meetings that we've had, working with, I don't want to start naming the councils, but all those public meetings were attended by the city council and supported. Secretary Ash and the gentleman started reading the paper. 100% correct. Secretary Ash said the future to Lynn starts with market rate housing. We agree wholeheartedly with him. This is a culmination of a lot of hard work. I hope and strongly support this proposal. The site plan review made up of myself and Mike Donovan and Charlie Gator and Jamie Marsh and Bob Stillion and others strongly support this. We respectfully ask that you do as well. Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak in favor?
Good evening. Eric Loth, 231 Sutton Street, North Andover. I'm one of the proponents of the Beacon development site. I may not be able to speak as eloquently as Isaac or Jim just did, and I was making notes as we sat, so if I jump around a little, I apologize. But I appreciate the opportunity to at least mention a couple things, and I really do believe in what Jim said. I can echo what a number of the other residents said as well, is we have a housing crisis in the state. We need more housing.
President, point of information, is this for?
This is in favor.
The public hearing for?
This is the portion.
I'm in favor, yeah.
This is the portion in favor, yes.
Thank you.
Sorry, continue.
Sure, thank you.
Excuse me.
Oh, no problem, thank you. We need more housing. I know there are something like 20,000 families that are living in hotel and motel rooms around the state. We have a huge housing problem. If you look at downtown Boston, and what I've heard tonight is everybody's concerned about, rents running up in Boston and then coming out across East Boston through Revere and out here, and that's absolutely happening. And part of the problem is there's so little land in Boston and it's so difficult to permit things, and the construction costs are so high that prices keep going up, up, and up. My feeling is any housing you build is good housing, whether it's expensive or cheap, because what happens when we have the next housing bust, when apartments are $6,000 a month in Boston, a year or two later they'll be $3,000 a month, and the ones that were $3,000 a month in East Boston, they'll be $2,000, and there's a ripple effect. To say that we won't miss the opportunity here in Lynn, I don't think is true, because we've seen it happen before. My office is in North Andover. We're right next to Lawrence, which is a somewhat similar situation to Lynn, but doesn't have all the benefits of being closer to Boston, the waterfront, some of the manufacturing base that is still here because so many people stayed. A lot more people left Lawrence. But what happens every time the economy really gets cranked up, you get a bunch of people like me, other developers go, boy, there's this great opportunity. There's an old mill building. Here's some empty land. Let's go in. There's a good backbone to the city. And you go through and maybe you run into a few roadblocks here and there, and all of a sudden the market starts rolling over, and all of a sudden you can't do it anymore. We don't want that to happen here. I agree. Maybe there's a shift that's happening enough that will carry it through. But I think if you can get some housing built, it'll be a good thing, because all the housing that'll be built will be new, energy efficient, healthy. You know, it won't be 100-year-old housing stock like we have in a lot of the state, in these triple deckers that a lot of them need to be rehabbed, because you're spending way too much money for heat, you're spending way too much money for electricity. It's not healthy for kids. So new housing is certainly a good thing. There's been a lot of talk about the retail. Frankly, we're agnostic as to whether there's retail there or not. We'd love to see retail work there. We just don't really think it can. We've built a lot of retail, CVS, Stop and Shops, bank branches, all sorts of things. The only retail we really think would work there is drive-through oriented retail. You see the Dunkin' Donuts, the fast food shops. So for us to achieve that, it wouldn't really fit in on the site. That being said, we've set aside some room for a retail type usage. We actually spoke with a credit union that's interested in going there, because we would like to have the corner of the building where you come in enlivened. We want people coming in there. So where the intersection is right now from downtown Lynn coming into the Beacon site, that's going to be the intersection coming into our property. And there'll be some parking spaces so you can access the state park and the walkway and everything. So we'd love to see some retail, but in everybody we've spoken with and in our experience, we just don't really think it'll work. If we can make it work, we'd love to have it. We don't want to have empty storefronts, because I don't think Lynn needs to see empty storefronts. It wouldn't help us, obviously. As far as the parking goes, whether we do a 9-foot wide spot or an 8.5-foot wide spot, it's not a huge deal. It helps us. It helps us add some more parking in. I was mentioning to one of the people I spoke with before, one of our partners that we did one of our projects with manages about 12 or 13,000 apartment units. And if they're in the suburbs, they want to see 1.75 to 2 parking spaces per unit. Doesn't matter if they're 1s, 2s, or 3 bedrooms. This has a blended rate. If you were in the city core, you might even go to half a space, or if you're in New York, they won't even let you build any parking. So we're somewhere in the middle there. We're not in the suburbs. We're not downtown. We think the minimum we'd want to get away with is 1 spot. We're proposing 1.3 parking spaces per unit. It's mostly 1 and 2 bedroom units. In the past, we've built plenty of 40B projects in North Andover, Newburyport, different places, and we've been closer to 1.75 spaces because there wasn't access to the rail station. You didn't have the ferry, you didn't have the bus lines. So we're comfortable with that number of parking, whether it's 8.5-foot wide or 9-foot wide. And really, it's a business risk for us. If we don't have enough parking spaces, people aren't going to want to live there. We're going to lose money. So we've done a fair amount of research on that. We're comfortable with that number. It's based on something. And I guess one last or 2 last things. One, someone mentioned hiring local people and whether there's unions. We typically entitle and develop. We're not a general contractor. We'll hire a general contractor, so I don't know the answers to those questions yet. But I think the more local people that can be involved, the better. That's good for us. That's good for everybody. And then I can't speak for any of the other sites along the Linway and the other developers, but I know that the Beacon site is a difficult site. I mean, that's part of the reason why it sat for so long. It had pollution on it. It still has an AUL. So to develop that site, you either have to cap the entire site or bring in 3 feet of fresh fill on it. And if you're digging out, you have to have a soil management plan in place. I mean, all these things they're not technically difficult, but they're very expensive. I mean, to put 3 feet of clean fill all over the entire site is a huge expense. Along the shore, there was at one point a revetment like you see at the Heritage State Park, that nice sloped granite. It's basically all gone along the Beacon site, so that needs to be rebuilt. That's probably $1 million issue. And then at the end of the day, we're looking at it and saying, gee, we love Lynn. If you go out there to the back of the site and you look at the water, just like you do if you're staying on top of the Walmart, it's beautiful. You could be anywhere. It's just a beautiful, beautiful site. But we're still cognizant of the fact that it's Lynn. With all its strengths and its proximity to Boston, there's still only so much rent we think we can get. And we don't even know what that number is because there hasn't been anything new that's comparable that's been built in Lynn for a long time. So we're scratching our heads, and our research guys are going, well, there's this project in Salem that was built. And I said, okay, but Salem's not Lynn. Well, what about Revere? Revere's not Lynn, so it's really difficult to pin down what we think we can do in Lynn. So I know in Cambridge, when we looked at projects, you think you can get $3.50 per square foot. A 1,000 square foot unit might be $3,500 a month, which is a lot of money. In Revere, they're getting between $2,500 and $3,000 a month, $2.50 to $3 a square foot. In North Andover, we're doing a project now, we're thinking we can get it $2.15 a square foot. In Lynn, I think we'll probably shoot for $1.80 to $1.90 a square foot. You know, a one bedroom, a two bedroom, it depends a little bit. But if those numbers are much lower than that, we really can't afford to build. Now, this project that we're proposing right now, we're looking at, for the building that's closest to the Linway, it'd be two levels of parking. One would be down a little bit, one would be up about 5 or 6 feet, and then 5 stories of housing, because that's as high as you can go in wood under the building code in Massachusetts. Because to go to a steel frame building, you just can't afford to do it. Everything is so expensive these days. So although you see a big project going up, say, gee, they're gonna make a ton of money. We hope to, but it could go the other way too, because we don't think there's a ton of margin here. We think it's a great opportunity, and if the market keeps going in the right direction and people want to come here, like Secretary Ash is saying, young people, hopefully people that live here already are going to move in here, and then you'll get some new blood moving in here, and they'll spend money at the businesses downtown. It's a great opportunity, but that margin is kind of tight. So I understand what people are saying is we should ask for things, but at the same time, there's only so much we can give because it's a large risk. If you went to downtown Wellesley and said you're going to build 100 units of housing, it probably wouldn't matter what happened or how much you spent, you'd make tons of money. But coming to a place like Lynn, despite all the great things about it, you're still taking a big risk. So we have to be careful of what we can promise. We've always worked in a very collaborative manner. We've built hundreds of units through the 40B process. So we've built a lot of affordable housing, most of it at 80% of the median income. I think Isaac was right that median income is fairly close to what market rate is here right now. But like Jim said, you've done an incredible job with your affordable housing already. To have some other opportunities for people to really mix the community up, I think would be a wonderful thing. But anyways, thank you for your time and consideration and so forth.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor? Anyone else wishing to speak in favor? Seeing no one else wishing to speak in favor, I close the public hearing for those wishing to speak in favor. I close the public hearing. What's the wish of the council? Councilor Lozzi?
Thank you, Mr. President.
Is there a motion, Councilor?
I'd like to make a motion to approve.
Motion has been made to approve and seconded. Discussion.
I'll defer to the councilor that the project would be in your ward.
Right. So I just want to make a few comments here. I'm going to support moving forward with this. I know a lot of time and effort has gone into bringing development here, and I've been to all those meetings, over the years, and sort of encouraged development there, and have been involved to getting us to this point. But I do share some of the concerns of some of the people that spoke. I have a lot of respect for the people that spoke here, and some of them are friends of mine. So I think that some of the issues that were brought up are worth for us to have some sort of forum where some dialogue could be achieved, And I know there's a housing market study being done on Lynn right now, and I would just like to suggest here that we schedule a meeting, and either with the Housing Committee, the Economic Development Committee, or the City Council, or both, and allow, for some of this dialogue to take place. I also agree, maybe we could do a better job. We definitely could do a better job at some of the public notices so people are aware, So just some points there. So I would like to propose that we do that we do schedule a meeting, so some of these people have a place where they can discuss some of these issues and come to some resolutions maybe at some point. But the dialogue, there has to be a forum for dialogue somewhere.
I would take that in form of a friendly motion
I'm in
before
agreement with that.
Agreed with, seconded by Councilor Lozey, to refer this matter to Chairwoman Chakoudas' committee, which is Housing and Elder Affairs. All those in favor of referring such a matter to the committee for further discussion, say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. So that will be scheduled through Madam Chairwoman for an immediate meeting with residents in conjunction with Councilor Capano. On the underlying matter, do you yield to Councilor Seer? Councilor
Go right
Seer.
ahead, Counselor.
Well, thank you. I don't even know where to begin. I agree with a lot of things that were said here tonight, but I also take a look at the opportunity Lynn has. 25, 30 years ago, Lynn was an industrial city where it provided tens of thousands of jobs in factories, which were responsible for hundreds of thousands of jobs that supported the people of Lynn. And I look at the development of the Lynnway as Lynn's new industry, to be perfectly honest with you, which will provide jobs for everybody who lives there. I also look at it that this is an $80 million project, and this is just one project, and there could be 20 or 30 projects of this size or even bigger along the Lynnway. So we're talking tens of billions of dollars, if not hundreds of billions of dollars, being invested into the Lynnway, which would bring in tens of millions of dollars worth of jobs. A lot of the things that were said here tonight was, how is Lynn going to benefit? That's how Lynn will benefit. It was also said that Lynn's a blue-collar city. I've lived here my entire life. I've worked in the GE, I've owned businesses, as many of the councilors here have. I've worked in the city, and I worked in Mayor McManus's office when Beacon Chevrolet was first acquired by the group that owned it, and it has sat vacant for almost 30 years, as Mr. Cardell said. I sympathize with a lot of things that the group that got up and spoke in opposition of it, but we've been hearing for 50 years and longer about developing the Lynnway. And all the time, there's roadblocks that are put up to prevent that. We actually have a real opportunity to start that development tonight. I agree with what Councilor Capano was saying, that we should have more dialogue, and we should better notify the public. That the gentleman said earlier that there are so many different minority groups in the city, and a lot of people don't speak and don't understand English. There are many ways that we can communicate with the public, and we're not doing a good enough job at that. But I really believe that this is our opportunity to start development, to start a new industry in Lynn, and that new industry in Lynn is the Lynnway. It's a huge opportunity that I can't see us passing up. And every single person who was sitting here tonight who got up and spoke, I guarantee you will all benefit from that. And the way you will benefit from it is by the jobs it will create for each and every single one of us. There's some people sitting here that I know used to work in the GE, and the jobs that the GE provided were good-paying jobs. But Lynn has lost all those jobs. That's why we have the housing problem that we have in the city. Here is our opportunity to do something about it. Instead of taking this as a negative, take it as a positive. Please. I'm in favor of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Seer. Councilor Lozey.
Thank you, Mr. President. I've been a councilor for over 12 years, and many good people in this city, my colleagues, Jim Cowdell, others in the city, along with the numerous public hearings that we've had over the last several years regarding the waterfront development. This is exciting, and to hear that one phase of a very large portion of our waterfront is going to finally come to fruition. And I think we, unfortunately for a lot of good people that spoke tonight, as my colleague said, we respect what you said, we understand where you're coming from, but the facts speak for themselves. Lynn is already an affordable housing community. it would never, we don't have to worry about 40B. We have well over the required affordable housing. We've heard a lot of good things. We're close to Boston. We have a lot going for us. We can't afford to be indecisive. We need to move forward with this. The market will dictate what will work. And if there are developers willing to do this, perform this kind of work at $80 million of investment, I don't think we should be standing in the way. So I'm very much in favor of this, and I'm excited to see it move forward.
Thank you.
Along with any additional input that we can have for the remaining waterfront. So thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilor Lozey. Any other discussion? Councilor LaPierre.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to commend folks who stood up and spoke this evening. Your comments do not go without notice. I would just add to what my colleagues have already stated. I don't want to overstate the matter, but I think Lynn is on the verge with the $80 million project, and all I heard about, in running for office across the city was how do we expand our tax base. And I think the figure was somewhere around $1.3 million in new investment for the city of Lynn. It's new revenues coming in. It's important to have revenues. And to go along with that, I'm also sensitive to the needs of other communities, and we don't want to see folks priced out of a housing market, for sure. I think Councilor Lozey's statement of the 30+% of affordable housing speaks to itself. We do our fair share here. We do more than our fair share. And when we look at the design, and when we look at the investment, this is a well-thought-out, smart building design, economically friendly, very viable along the waterfront. We will have an opportunity to go forward and develop Lynn in the right way that you may speak of or that you may favor by way of linkage and things like community benefits. But we are not Boston yet. We cannot command those leverage requirements. But down the road, there are possibilities to do so. And all we can ask is that our developers take care of our Lynn folks, put them to work for you, pay them a decent wage, and be good neighbors. And I think that's all that this council wants, and that's all that our Lynn community would like. And we want to see a wonderful development that's state-of-the-art and not a vacant land that I've seen my whole life. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor LaPierre. Any other discussion? Councilor Barton.
Mr. President, there's nothing but good things that can come out of this. I call for the vote.
Okay. Could I possibly have a few moments, Councilor Barton? I apologize, but I'll try to be as brief as I possibly can. If there's no objection for me speaking from the chair, no objection. I'd just again like to thank the folks who came out to testify in support and opposition of this. This is part of the democratic process, and your voices are heard, and we do take into consideration everyone's viewpoints. This is a private development. Now, I say that because we've done many public developments, and when I say a public development, I mean ones that we utilize tax incentives. Two come to mind, the Market Basket and the Lower Washington Street development. And there's a difference between the two. When you're dealing with a public development, there is, to use a word, leverage that the city can use. And in fact, in those projects, because we're giving tax incentives, there are obligations and bogeys that developers need to hit to make sure that they hire locally, they use local work, and in conjunction with the Lower Washington, they're going to be using unionized labor to do that project, and they're also going to have a large component of affordable housing. So we do have a commitment when we do public projects to use our leverage to make sure that the needs of the community are met. Now, we're talking about a private development. The zoning that has been put in place for many years now is by right zoning. The developer has come to us today for minor changes. We could reject the minor changes, and this building will be built with as much leverage as we have today, which is very little to none. What we're trying to do is set a tone to developers who want to invest $80 million to $90 million worth of investment that we're willing to make small, minor changes. These minor changes are changing the width of parking spaces a half of a foot. A half of a foot. We're not eliminating all the commercial space. We're reducing the commercial space. You heard from the gentleman who spoke in favor, talking about maybe a community bank. And to refute or argue against a statement made earlier, I do want folks who live in those developments to leave that complex and go to the downtown. When you do create a silo where you have your dry cleaning, your grocery needs, and your coffee needs all in one silo, you're not leaving that building. You live in it, you drive into it, and you drive out to it. We want people to come to the downtown and utilize the coffee shops and the dry cleaners that we have, and also the restaurants. And the public benefits are just too great. We've all spoken about the public benefits. In Lynn, we have a money issue, whereas our costs are growing faster than our tax revenues. We've had a 2,000 student increase in our schools since 2013. It's a 15% increase. 2,000. To say there are no rooms for families doesn't add up with the data, because we're having a number of families move into the city. And there's plenty of room for them, but that comes at a cost, because we can't afford to keep up with our schools. And when we can't afford to keep up with the quality of education in our schools, we can't keep up with our public safety. And if you can't keep up with public safety in schools, well, guess what, folks? You know what's going to happen in our community. No one's going to want to live here, and we're trying to move away from that. So these small changes will bring great profits to the city of Lynn, that is true, and we're going to put that to good use. We are all residents here as well, and many of us have raised our families here. I'm raising my family here as well, and I want to keep Lynn families here. And this is the way we do it. Because with tax revenues coming in and new residents coming in to spend their money in the downtown, that's going to reduce the burden on debt obligation for the city. When we go out and fix the parks and fix your sidewalks and fix your streets and we're trying to fix everything in the city. If you notice, there's a lot of needs. Well, that causes debt, and we need to pay that debt. And we can't pay our debts. And to pay our public safety and our teachers, well, we don't have the money for that either. So we're trying to make sure that we have the necessary revenues to make this city as great as it can be and continue forward, and we're including the affordable housing piece. I didn't hear one person talk about the Lower Washington, maybe one person talked about the Lower Washington project. That's a huge project. To be honest with you, there were a lot of folks in the state that didn't think we should have done that project. And now they're coming forward and saying that what we're doing here is a good change. And again, this is private money, not public. We're not subsidizing this one nickel. This is all benefits to the city of Lynn. So with that being said, I'm very excited about this project. I understand the concerns of the community. I think we all understand the concerns of the community. But this is quite possibly a pinnacle moment in the city of Lynn, where we're going to be able to maintain our lifestyles in the city of Lynn for many generations to come. Thank you for your time. Thank you for listening to me. And as Councilor Barton so eloquently put it, he calls for the vote. Except we have one more statement of support that wishes to be read into the record.
We have a statement of support from Jim Cowdell, the Executive Director of EDIC, and I won't read that because he pretty much made the statements that he has echoed in this letter, but it will go into the record, as well as a letter from the Planning Board with a motion recommending that the City of Lynn zone ordinance be amended regulating multifamily high-rise buildings in the WF1, WF1A, WF2, WF3, WS and SHCO districts and off-street parking facility requirements.
Motion made and seconded. Roll call.
Counsel Barton?
Yes.
Yes. Counsel Cahill?
Yes.
Yes. Counsel Capano?
Yes.
Yes. Counsel Chakutis?
Yes.
Yes. Counsel Calucci? Yes. Yes. Counsel Sia?
Yes.
Yes. Counsel LaPierre?
Yes.
Yes. Counsel Lozey?
Yes.
Yes. Counsel Net, absent. Counsel Trahan?
Yes.
Yes. Counsel Walsh?
Yes.
Yes. 10 yes.
Next public hearing.
The next public hearing is a petition of Fiesta Shows Eugene Dean for permission for a carnival fundraiser for the 4th of July Fireworks Fund at McManus Field, May 4th to 10th.
Go to a quick recess. Motion for a recess.
Council's call for a quick recess. Quick recess.
There it is.
Call back into session. Madam Clerk, we were about to begin
I will repeat that.
a
just
public
so that-
hearing for a fiesta.
Fiesta Show Eugene Dean for permission for a carnival fundraiser for the 4th of July fireworks at McManus Field, May 4th through 10th.
I'm going to open the public hearing for those wishing to speak in favor. Anyone in favor? Anyone in favor? Seeing no one in favor, I close the public hearing for those wishing to speak in favor. Open the public hearing for those wishing to speak in opposition. 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 Would you like to speak in opposition to the carnival?
Right.
Correct. No one wishing to speak in opposition. Close the public hearing for those wishing to speak in opposition. I close the public hearing. Councilor Capano?
Yeah, so DPW contacted Joe Skeetis, the athletic director at Lynn Tech, and there's no conflict with any events. The school won't be using the field, so it's okay to carnival as far as they're concerned.
Motion to approve, seconded. All those, roll call.
Counsel Barton?
Yes.
Yes. Counsel Cahill?
Yes.
Yes. Counsel Capano?
Yes.
Yes. Counsel Chakutis?
Yes.
Yes. Counsel Calucci?
Yes.
Yes. Counsel Seer?
Yes.
Yes. Counsel LaPierre?
Yes.
Yes. Counsel Net, I'm sorry, Counsel Lozey?
Yes.
Yes. Counsel Net, absent. Counsel Trahan?
Yes.
Yes. Counsel Walsh?
Yes.
Yes.
Next petition.
Next petition is petition of Fiesta Shows Eugene Dean for permission for a carnival fundraiser for the 4th of July fireworks at Keeney Park, June 1st through 7th.
I'm going to open the public hearing for those wishing to speak in favor. Anyone in favor? Anyone in favor? Seeing no one in favor of the Fiesta Carnival at Keeney Park, I close the public hearing for those wishing to speak in favor. I open the public hearing for those in opposition. Anyone like to wish to speak in opposition, or would you just like to do a show of hands?
Well, I'm in opposition.
If you want to speak, sir, you just come right here.
I come every year just to say my piece, and it happens anyway.
Could you state your name for the record, please, and your
Tony
address?
Hill, well, Tony Hill, I live at 18 Memorial Park Ave in Lynn.
Thank you.
I come every year, and it happens every year, so I just come to say my piece. Well, at least it's moving towards Tech, and I think Tech is a better spot. There's nobody there to complain about the parking or the trash or anything over there. So I think they should try to move both of them to Tech. They're still gonna get the 5,000 no matter where it is, I hope. So I don't see why they don't move to Tech, and we won't have a problem in our area, which we do have now. It's getting worse. Now they're parking on the grass on regular days. So I don't know where or how we can do anything about the parking or anything. So I just come every year to say my piece, and hopefully they'll move it one year. So thank you for the time.
Thank you, Mr. Hill. Anyone else in opposition? Anyone else in opposition? Seeing no one else wishing to speak in opposition, I close the public hearing. For those wishing to speak in opposition, I close the public hearing. Councilor Trahan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I feel Mr. Hill's pain. I deal with him every year. This year here, I've moved it down to a lot of people know the volunteer field right at the end by the how you call it, the old A&P, but the food store. I moved it down to that corner. We've talked to Gary Malaya and Dickie Newton added Lynn English. They're all set with there's no sporting events being played on that week at the field. So also the police are gonna promise to come down. They're gonna show a lot of presence there, and they're keep the cars away from the neighbors, in front of their houses, and they're gonna ticket tag them, whatever they have to do, tow them. So with that being said, I make a motion to approve.
Motion has been made to approve and seconded. Any discussion? Roll call.
Counsel Barton?
Yes.
Yes. Counsel Cahill?
Yes.
Yes. Counsel Capano?
Yes.
Yes. Counsel Chakutis?
Yes.
Yes. Counsel Calucci?
Yes.
Yes. Counsel Seer?
Yes.
Yes. Counsel LaPierre?
Yes.
Yes. Counsel Lozey?
Yes.
Yes. Counsel Net, absent. Counsel Trahan?
Yes.
Yes. Counsel Walsh?
Yes.
Yes, 10 yes. And petition of Chestnut Street Realty Trust, Ashmat Ralph, for permission for a two-story addition with 10 residential units above existing stores at 522, 538 Chestnut Street.
I'm going to open the public hearing for those wishing to speak in opposition. In favor? Anyone wishing to speak in favor? I tried to play with you a little bit there, Sam.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm Attorney Sam Vitale. My office is here in Lynn at 60 Andrew Street. With me this evening is Rick Salvo from Alliance Engineering and Hasmet and Hormet Ralph, the brothers who own the property. As shown on this map, I'm certain Councilor Lozey, Councilor Trahan, people who live in the Chestnut Street and Western Avenue area are familiar. I see that Dr. Specs is here, who's in the butter. This is a building that has 6 existing commercial retail stores on the first floor. The bike shop, if you're a bicyclist, you may know the bike shop. There's a salon, there's a convenience store, and for many years, it's been a one-story commercial building. It is, in fact, in the business district, which brings us here, because to propose and have built a residential use requires city council consent. And I believe that this is consistent with what some of the discussion was about earlier. I do have a petition signed by many of the neighbors and abutters, if I could pass it up there, who are in favor. The proposal is to add a second story and a third story. It would have a total of 5 residential units on the second floor and 5 on the third floor. There would be a mix of 6 one-bedroom and 4 two-bedrooms, two bedrooms on each, 2 two-bedroom units on each floor, and the remaining single-bedroom units. It's a residential use. It meets the required parking. We went through and did preliminary site plan pre-conference, and there were certain recommendations made, as well as those made by Councilor Lozzi, and those were taken to heart, and that was that the number of units be limited to 10, that the number of two-bedroom units be limited. But this is a neighborhood building. It's one which has been there many, many years, and I think enjoys the support of those who are abutters, including, as I say, Dr. Speck's, whose office is on the corner of Weston and Chestnut. I couldn't help but notice, Mr. President, that previously Jim Cowdell was here, a former council president, a colleague of many of you, and there are some new councilors. But a lot of this began under his leadership at the city council when the downtown was recognized as having the potential for having mixed use. Residential uses that would bring people who would, in fact, go to the restaurants, go to the shops, and bring some life back to the downtown area. Many areas of the country, Brooklyn, which is, believe it or not, probably the 7th largest city in the United States. If you went through the neighborhoods in Brooklyn, you'd see retail stores on the first floor. You'll see apartments on the second, third floor. Why we're here is, as I say, the council is the authority who gives approval for a residential use in a business district. But this council and its predecessors, as I say, Councilor Cadell, Councilor Cahill, and one of your former colleagues, Councilor Crichton, and I don't know if there's any, well, there may be some here old enough to remember as I do. There was once a time when the city council had the 3 Bs. But I was thinking that now we got the 3 Cs. We had Cowdell and Cahill and Crichton. And they did share a vision with respect to using zoning as a way to encourage positive growth. And you've seen some of these issues brought before you tonight as to what is the proper balance and how does one go about and achieve that. While it may not be the New York Times, the paper of record was cited earlier this evening, and that's the Daily Item. And I went back and found that the council back in March of 2015 took up rezoning the Boston Street Business District corridor. What came from that? The development now that's going on adjacent to the Pine Grove Cemetery behind the new CVS, and state agencies, the Metropolitan Area Planning Council and others, said that one of the areas that needs housing and growth is the so-called Boston Street corridor. And when I went back and saw that that was on the agenda, I also saw that the council and those who served, some of you here, approved what was called the HD zoning, housing development, and it said a quarter of the city would be included, and it was defined by Western Avenue, Chestnut Street, extending to the Highlands and parts of West Lynn. And the purpose of that was, and these are their numbers, not mine, in the next 15 years, they project that there will be 6,000 more households in Lynn. That in the previous 10 years, there were like 4 multifamily buildings developed. There were like 78 single-family homes. And you've been part of the reason that now there is this development, and the economy is rebounding, and there is a demand, and what we need to do is use our existing housing stock and try to satisfy that demand with a supply of reasonable growth. So as I looked at this article, and it's from the March 24, 2015 Lynn Item, one of the other architects of growth for housing in the city Charlie Gator, who also served here many years ago, sent a letter in support of the HD zone. And he said that it would be an important tool and a significant initiative. And I think we've seen that come to fruition, as I say, with the development that you approved last summer, I believe, the Birchwood Estates that's being built on North Bend. Before he left, and at the final meeting of the council, before Councilor Lapierre joined you and Councilor Walsh joined you on December 15th of 2015, this council approved a 21-unit development on the corner of Silsby, using an existing building. But it also adopted what was called, and this is from the Monday, December 21 Lynn item, Lynn on a Path to Growth, and it talked about the PATH program and how there would be financial incentives. Apparently PATH stands for Planning Assistance Towards Housing. And these are programs that the state has with funding that recognize there is a need for housing. And no question, Lynn has done its fair share with respect to affordable housing, but the reality exists, as the council president pointed out, you need to expand that tax base so that this project would involve an expenditure of probably $1.5 million. It's not as big as the ones you've heard before, not as big as some of the ones you approved before. But while it's a modest proposal, I think it's one that fits in the neighborhood. It's one that would generate additional revenue. I think it's one consistent with these goals that were outlined in previous votes of the City Council, and I would hope that you give it some consideration with respect to the need for one-bedroom homes, for people who want to stay in the neighborhood, who want to frequent neighborhood businesses. I think that this is an ideal mix. As I say, Rick's here from Alliance Engineering, Hasman and his brother is here, and I see one of the abutters are here, and I'd be glad at the end of the presentation if you have questions to answer that any councilor may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Vitale. Very thorough. Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor? Anyone else wishing to speak in favor? Seeing no one else wishing to speak in favor, I close the public hearing for those wishing to speak in favor. I open the public hearing for those wishing to speak in opposition. If you could please come to the podium and state your name and address for the record.
Good evening. Gary Beaver, 548 Chestnut Street. I oppose it, and there is some neighborhood opposition to it. Tonight I ask really that you table it and give the neighborhood some information. I've heard condos, low-income housing, high-income housing. I've heard really not clear what it is. But I'll just give you a little bit of information about the neighborhood because I've been there for 35 years. I own a business there and some properties. We have a detail that's through some kind of a grant from the Lynn Police right now that goes between Western Ave and the Richdales on Chestnut. You're probably familiar with it.
We've all been pulled over.
They're there every day. There's a reason. It's one of the most, it's terrible area. There is no parking there, and we don't get any support from the parking department. And I'm not looking for them to come up there, but there's no meters. It says 15 minutes in front of my office, and I believe there was a car parked there one day for like 14 days, one time for 14 days. We finally called, had it towed away because it was stolen. When it snows, people in the neighborhood come and park in my yard. We don't have a problem with it. As a matter of fact, I invite some of the people. I tell them you need a plumber to get off the street, go right ahead. Be out by 7, or we'll have the school department tow you. But what is this going to be? There is not enough parking there. Right now, there's an apartment building between myself and, I call him Ash because that's how I was introduced to him, and there are 12 units. They're one-bedroom units. There is, and I'll show you a video right now, on a nightly basis, 30 vehicles there. You heard earlier the opposition to your other thing saying multiple families in one apartment, this, that, and the other thing. I deal with the immigrants. I employ several hundred of them. I go to their homes. I see it every day. But anyways, what's going to go on here, Counselor? I haven't heard anything. I did talk to Ash briefly for a moment. When I realized that it's a business district and I don't have to just turn over and let it happen, then I want some information. And there are some other neighbors that want some information. All of my tenants would like some information. So I asked today, rather than put the man out in the cold or however this works, because this isn't something that I do, that we table it and we have a discussion he perhaps if the facts come out, I might be in favor of it. But right now, I oppose it, and for good reason. Can I filibuster?
You could sit there as long as you'd like. We might not be here, though, to hear you.
Exactly my point. That's what happened as far as this development goes. No one's been there. We've heard nothing. So, you know, Mr. Vitale talked about a couple of things that I thought were interesting, because when they were renovating, you know, doing all the work downtown, and you could go get a canopy and all this stuff, I was happy. Mr. Gardell was one grade ahead of me in school. And before him, I knew the other. I went down and find out I was 2 blocks outside of where they were giving grants and things to give you a discount off, you know, giving you 0% financing for them. So our area has never been a problem for business. In his building now, there's a church. There's a variety store. A new gentleman opened it up. And I try to go there, but guess what? If I don't walk down there, if I ever drive by, when the church is in session, you can't get a parking spot. I'm not opposed to the church because it's usually after hours. But where are they going to park when the back parking lot's full of residents? Has anybody considered that? They have a shipping company that works out of the corner of his business. They have shipping trailers, shipping containers. I think they're 33, 34, 35 foot long. Sometimes 2 or 3 of them out back there. Where are they going to put those? There needs to be some more thought here. So I ask that you oppose it, and I'm not opposing it because I'm against development or housing or anything good. I'm a Lynn businessman. I've been a Lynn businessman for 36 and a half years, and I don't plan on leaving. So help me out here.
Thank you, Mr. Beaver.
Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition? Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition? Seeing no one else wishing to speak in opposition, I close the public hearing. For those wishing to speak in opposition, I close the public hearing. Councilor Lozey.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. 2 things here. One, we heard earlier in testimonies regarding other housing, a bit of a conflict as to whether there is sufficient or insufficient housing in Lynn. And I think that we need to have more input regarding housing, and I believe that the Lynn Housing Authority is doing a housing study for Lynn. So I think we're going to have to wait on that. And 2, we've heard from a direct abutter who has several concerns, and I think that the developers should be willing and prepared to have neighborhood meetings regarding your proposal, and we'll put this together. So right now, I'd like to propose that we table this.
Second. Motion to table is non-debatable, seconded. Roll call.
Counsel Barton?
Yes.
Yes, Counsel Cahill?
Yes.
Yes, Counsel Capano?
Yes.
Yes, Counsel Chakutis?
Yes.
Yes, Counsel Calucci?
Yes.
Yes, Counsel Seer?
Yes.
Yes, Counsel LaPierre?
Yes.
Yes, Counsel Lozey?
Yes.
Yes, Counsel Net, absent Counsel Trahan?
Yes.
Yes, Counsel Walsh?
Yes.
Yes, 10 yes. We have 3 public hearings to set down, if there's no objection.
Is there any objection to reading them all at once and having them sit down at once?
No.
Seeing none?
No.
Motion made to
Petitioner-
set them down?
Sorry. Petition of Children and Family Dentistry, did you ask me to read them? But don't read them?
Oh, no, I did not.
Oh,
No,
okay.
no, please.
Petition of Children and Family Dentistry embraces Patrick Assoon for permission for a sign permit at 319 Linway. Petition of $1 Zone Roberto Tobolino for permission for a sign permit at 50 Boston Street. And petition of Ari's Cafe G, Greek African Social Club, Agarwe Beher for permission for a malt and wine license 7 days, 12 noon to 1 a.m. at 39 Buffum Street.
What's the wish of the council? Motion to set them down by Council Calucci, seconded by Council LaPierre. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Unfinished business? Councilor Capano?
I'd like to take off the table the matter of Verizon Wireless on Harbor Street.
Motion to take off the table is motion seconded. Roll call?
Counsel Barton?
Yes.
Yes, Counsel Cahill?
Yes.
Yes, Counsel Capano?
Yes.
Yes, Counsel Chakutis?
Yes.
Yes, Counsel Calucci?
Yes.
Yes, Counsel Seer?
Yes.
Yes, Counsel LaPierre?
Yes.
Yes, Counsel Lozey? Absent Counsel Net, absent Counsel Trahan?
Yes.
Yes, Counsel Walsh?
Yes.
Yes, 9 yes.
Councilor Capano. Councilor Capano.
There's 7 or 8 other locations in the city, too, besides Harbor Street.
Do you want me to read the petition out?
Madam Clerk,
Just so everybody's sure what the...
yes, Madam Clerk's going to read the petition.
Petition is Salco Partnership, DBA Verizon Wireless, Daniel Klasnick, for permission to attach, maintain, and operate small cell communications equipment on existing utility poles located within the city right-of-way near the following locations: 99 Essex Street, 92 Franklin Street, Vector Way, 235 O'Callahan Way, 85 to 91 Harbor Street, 68 Sylvia Street, 3 Wardwell Ave, and 68 Western Ave.
Councilor Capano.
Yeah, motion to approve.
Motion made to approve and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Counsel Barton?
Yes.
Yes, Counsel Cahill?
Yes.
Yes, Counsel Capano?
Yes.
Yes, Counsel Chakutis?
Yes.
Yes, Counsel Calucci? Yes. Yes, Counsel Seer?
Councilor Trahan told me I better vote yes, so yes.
Yes, Counsel LaPierre?
Yes.
Yes, Counsel Lozey, absent Counsel Net, absent Counsel Trahan?
Yes.
Yes, Counsel Walsh?
Yes.
Yes, 9 yes. Committee reports.
Committee reports.
Ordinance Committee, you have a proposed ordinance amending Lynn Human Rights Commission to include membership. Any member absent for three consecutive meetings without justifiable cause may be removed by his or her respective appointing authority.
Councilor Seer.
Unanimous vote by the committee. I make a motion to approve.
Motion made to approve and seconded. Discussion, roll call.
Counsel Barton?
Yes.
Yes, Counsel Cahill?
Yes.
Yes, Counsel Capano?
Yes.
Yes, Counsel Chakutis?
Yes.
Yes, Counsel Calucci?
Yes.
Yes, Counsel Seer?
Yes.
Yes, Counsel LaPierre?
Yes.
Yes, Counsel Lozey, absent Counsel Net, absent Counsel Trahan?
Yes.
Yes, Counsel Walsh?
Yes.
Yes, 9 yes. Education and Environmental Affairs Committee, and I need to read this into the minutes.
Madam Clerk, please read into the record.
Order that having convened in an open meeting on February 23rd, 2016, prior to the closing date, the Lynn City Council, in accordance with its charter, bylaws, and ordinances, has voted to authorize the superintendent to submit to the Massachusetts School Building Authority the statement of interest form dated on or before April 8, 2016, for the Tracy Elementary School located at 35 Walnut Street, Lynn, Mass. 01905, which describes and explains the following deficiencies in the priority categories for which an application may be submitted to the Massachusetts School Building Authority in the future for elimination of existing severe overcrowding, prevention of severe overcrowding expected to result in increased enrollments, replacement, renovation, or modernization of school facility systems such as roofs, windows, boilers, heating and ventilation systems to increase energy conservation expected and decrease related costs in a school facility, replacement of or addition to obsolete buildings in order to provide for a full range of programs consistent with state-approved local requirements, and hereby further specifically acknowledges that by submitting the statement of interest form, the Massachusetts School Building Authority in no way guarantees the acceptance or the approval of any application, the awarding of a grant, or any other funding commitment from the Massachusetts School Building Authority, or commits the District of Lynn to filing an application for funding with the Massachusetts School Building Authority.
Councilor LaPierre. Oh, Councilor.
He's not...
Councilor Councilor LaPierre, because Councilor Lozey, you were on the committee chair as well, right?
Unanimous vote of the committee.
Oh, sorry. Councilor Capano. Unanimous vote of the committee. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Counsel Barton?
Yes.
Yes, Counsel Cahill?
Yes.
Yes, Counsel Capano?
Yes.
Yes, Counsel Chakutis?
Yes.
Yes, Counsel Calucci?
Yes.
Yes, Counsel Seer?
Yes.
Yes, Counsel LaPierre?
Yes.
Yes, Counsel Lozey, absent Counsel Net, absent Counsel Trahan?
Yes.
Yes, Counsel Walsh?
Yes.
Yes, 9 yes.
Next committee report. Do we have any more?
Ways and Means, we have one order. Order that the city comptroller take the following action: certify as an available fund the sum of $75,000.00 from the United Ways Massachusetts Bay and Merrimack Valley for a SEMA Project RISE project fiscal year grant 16 grant for the fiscal year 15-16 school year grant period 7/1/15 to 6/30/16.
In the absence of Councilor Net, I would call upon Councilor Chakutis.
Committee voted unanimously on it.
Motion made to approve and seconded. All those in favor say aye, opposed no. The ayes have it.
They've requested an emergency.
Oh, we requested emergency. Councilor Jacutis makes a motion on the emergency.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Seconded by Councilor Trahant. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it.
And Public Safety and Public Health Committee, the report was tabled. Oh, no, he came back in, I'm sorry.
Chairman
He was
Barton.
approved.
Unanimous vote of committee, motion to approve.
Motion made to approve and seconded. Discussion. All those in favor, Constable appointment?
No, it's okay.
All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it.
License.
And Councilor Walsh.
Thank you. Unanimous vote of committee, motion to accept.
Motion to accept made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Any other further business?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion has been made to adjourn by Councilor Calucci, seconded by Councilor Sayre. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. We are adjourned.